Hi there, this is Liz Lewinson, and this is my first video about the Independence Ring, Rock the Female Revolution. This is the book that I've written, and although I have written it recently, it does represent quite a bit of time of thought and observation and processing some teachings that I learned, many years ago. And I thought that the best way to start this discussion would be to describe how I learned about the topics that are covered in the Independence Ring. I found these topics and these teachings to be both truthful and life-changing from pretty much the first minute I heard them. I had a big aha moment, as in, whoa, I have been fed a lot of BS, and so have we all women, all men, for a long, long time. It's mental programming and conditioning, and it's not true. So let me just start with this story, because that's what this first talk is about. It's a story. And it's a story about me back in the mid-1980s. And I was in my early 30s. So yes, you can do the math, and I don't care. Fine, do the math. Okay, so I was in my mid-30s, and I really had a lot of desire to get married, and I was worried about my biological clock, because by the time you're in your early 30s, you're starting to think, better have those kids, or going to be late. They're, even though the date goes out more and more, usually if you were thinking marriage, you're thinking children, by the time you're like 32, 33, you probably want to be in that spot. I wasn't in that spot. I wasn't close to it. I'd had many ridiculous relationships, and none of them happening at that point. And I was really feeling depressed about it. In fact, I was always on my case about it. My self-esteem was low, because if I didn't have this Mr. Right, this charming, wonderful person who would be able to take care of me a little bit, who would be a little bit more powerful than me, who would be a little bit more influential in some way than I was. I didn't think of myself as a mediocre person, but I just felt that this man that I sought should be somehow a little bit stronger in his maybe decision-making ability, in his career, just in some way a little bit more powerful than me. And then I would feel that we had a good match. So I was invited by a friend to hear this young American Buddhist teacher. And I was in LA. These kind of lectures were going on all the time. And I generally was not going to them. But I had nothing else to do that night. And I thought, well, what the heck? So I went. I remember dressing up and driving over to Beverly Hills Theater, where this lecture was being held, and thinking, it's another waste of time. There won't be any men there. I won't meet anyone. It's just like, what's the use? So, but I went, and I met a friend there and took a seat. And out came this teacher onto the stage that was my first shock. It was this young American fellow, and he himself was pretty cute. That was fun. And he really started talking right away. His topic was, why don't more women attain enlightenment, and why don't more men attain enlightenment? But the topic was really very quickly just about street life and men and women, and what has happened over the last, again, I would say several millennia, if not longer. And this is the gist of it. And I go into it more in the book, and I'll go into it more in other videotapes, but I'm going to summarize it here because this was so transformative for me. He said that actually, from a spiritual point of view, women are literally innately built to exemplify and express power in their life. And that because this is the case, what has happened over time, and it started a long time ago, is that men, not realizing that they had the same power in themselves, only it manifests in different ways, felt threatened by it. and sought to repress the power of women. Now, there's not going to be a man bashing talk at all, so bear with me. It all works out in the end. Having that sentiment, being nervous about the power of women, which I'm going to describe a little bit more, men have sought to repress it and successfully repressed it in every way, so that you look around at really thousands of years of history, women, we powerful women, have had no place, really limited roles in society, very repressed economically, repressed socially, repressed in terms of education, repressed basically anywhere you look. Women have had very little voice. It's just in the last literally 50 years in some Western countries, and I would say only in the last few years in some Western countries, that we're starting to really even get an edge on how deep-rooted this problem is, which is called the repression of the power of women, which is not natural. So, but anyway, he said, okay, women have been repressed by men. And then he went on to say that the kind of power that he's talking about, and I think this is really interesting, and this is the gist of it, is really to do with the what's called kind of an energy body or a subtle physical body that exists around every person. So each single person in the world, on the planet, is really made up of luminous strands of energy. I have some dogs and they're growling now. So I'm going to keep going. But if you hear growling, that's not me. It's my dogs. Okay. So, my good buddies growling. The subtle physical body of a woman vibrates at a different rate than a man. And this is the gist of it. Just as there's a different physical body in between a man and a woman, there is a different, what's called a subtle physical. And you say, well, how do I know there's an energy body around me? Well, if you use your intuition, I think you do know that. You've probably been around people who are, let's say, sad or depressed, and you've probably sensed it even before you got any conversation with them. And that's just a feeling that's in and around them, because emotions can be held right there. That's one example. Same thing with someone who's vibrantly happy about something. You can probably sense that well before you're talking to them. And that's another case of where it's just, it's around them. And what the teacher explained, and what I have since observed for the last 3 decades that this is true, is that the subtle physical body of a woman, or energy body, conducts life force more rapidly. Okay, her subtle physical goes out, it extends further, actually out like a butterfly's wings, and it's very, very pliant. So a lot of what you observe about women, that kind of pliant energy that women have, that fluidity, is actually not just in the physical, it's in the subtle physical. And he said that a man's subtle physical body is more condensed. It is more packed, a little bit more grid-like. And so it does not conduct life force as rapidly. It doesn't have that fluidity. And I would like to suggest, if you start looking at men and women this way, you're going to see very quickly, if you look with a little bit of the eyes of silence, of not maybe judging one way or the other and thinking this is BS or not BS, but rather just kind of quietly observe. It's easy to see sometimes with couples or people, sometimes a little bit younger, because it's just easier to tell, that the woman just has this sense of fluidity. The man is a little bit more packed, a little bit more not moving as fast vibrationally. And because of this, let me go back to the power discussion. The very nature of power, and I'm going to talk about this in the next video, is fluidity. It is movement. It is rapid change. So the fact that a woman can deal and exemplify rapid change and fluidity means that a woman she's wired for power. She's wired for dealing with power and exemplifying power. Now, if you're a man watching this, you can say, well, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for you is what a man is really able to do incredibly well, is to express love and humility. And love and humility, again, qualities you probably haven't heard that much about lately, but love doesn't just mean for one person. It's not the Valentine's Day card. Love is this expansive, joyful, loving life, this rich vein of joy and emotion that most men have absolutely also had repressed. So we have repression here on both sides. Repression of the power of women over many millennia, and repression of the love, humility just meaning really just being yourself, the love that's innate as a powerful aspect and probably the most natural aspect of their being for men. So the roles have been switched. And because of that, and this again is explained more in the book, but the teacher pointed out that everything we see in the world, the lack of world peace, has to do with the imbalance between men and women. That when women start to express more power, and women do have an affinity for it, and it's not the power of smashing, it is the power of fluidity, which is what natural power is actually all about as well. And if men are truly finding that they will experience and be more loving, and if the two genders accept these qualities in each other, we have a shot at solving a lot of family problems, a lot of social problems, and a lot of world problems. It's that basic. So there's a really strong core understanding, I call it seed knowledge, that's in the independence ring. And as we continue to go through this, you're going to see that there's a lot of aspects to it, but it comes back to this, that if women can't express their power at the really, really vast level that it exists, and if men are not able to express the love and humility, which is also infinitely vast, that they are suited for, then you have both genders walking around being less than they are. A little bit of a zombie story on both sides of the fence. Less happiness, less fulfillment, and the manifestations, obviously physically, mentally, and otherwise, are going to be pretty problematic. Oh, that's what we have going today. We know we have a lot of problems today to overcome, and yet I think we can each be the person that does it within ourselves. I left that room feeling transformed. I left the room feeling that my desire to find someone more powerful than myself, a male partner more powerful than me, that notion was pretty much laid to rest, because I deeply got this idea that I was the one with power because of the fluidity, of my being. And I also got that the biological time clock I was so worried about, well, that was another point that the teacher made, and I thought about it and it made sense to me. He said there are many, many, many ways to give to the world. And if it is not your destiny to have children in this life, it's okay. You can do other things to give back. And I looked at that and I thought, okay, maybe this is part of the conditioning I've been given. Let me think about this for a minute. And I have many friends who have children and they're doing a wonderful job raising them, and they get incredible fulfillment and joy out of that. I personally have not had children, nor have I married, and I get incredible joy and fulfillment out of my life.